Sorry, the lighting's really iffy, but whatever. So I was just gonna make a short video talking about how I've been reading articles lately, just sad things that are happening in the world, you guys, like mistakes that parents are making, and just how mean and unforgiving and just horrible people can be, like to these parents who undeniably are extremely sorrowful of the mistakes that they've made that has caused like their children to suffer in some way, like, or die even. But it's like, okay, like recently I was reading this article of a woman who has two children, and she had I think a 22-month-old son who was outside, and she was outside with her son and her daughter needed something quickly, and so she rushed inside to attend to her daughter and then came right back out within a minute or two, and her son was missing, and they searched and searched for him, and I just can't even imagine what this mother was feeling in this moment, being hysterical and feeling hopeless and helpless because she was the caregiver. She was the one who was supposed to take care of this child, and she's already feeling the guilt of having taken her eyes off of him for a moment, and then he disappears. And the next day, I believe it was a day or two later, they found him in a septic tank that was like 120 feet away from where she was, where she had last seen him. And gosh, just the comments section, the just the way people are treating her is so horrible, like all these parents jumping on there saying, da, 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 da. They're like, you know, keyboard warriors saying things like, well, she shouldn't have had children if she wasn't gonna like take better care of her son. She should have, done this, should have done this differently, shouldn't have done this, and just judging her in that way. And like, it's like, I feel God's heart grieve about it because the mother already knows the mistake that she made. She knows the mistake. She doesn't need like thousands of people, reminding her of ways that she could have done things differently when she's already fully aware of this, and she's going to carry that heartache and that regret for the rest of her life. So it's like I felt God's heart grieving so deep, and just how people can be so harsh and cruel and mean-spirited and say things that they know nothing about, and say things in their own understanding and misjudge her, pretending like they're perfect parents, like they've never made a mistake in their life, and God's already told me, like a lot of these comments, when I'm reading them, God's like, yeah, you may not have left, your son outside to run inside to do something, but you did do this, in your parenting mistake, you did do this, you did do that. Like, God's telling me, like, they are guilty of many things as parents that they're just not airing to the world, and they're pretending to be perfect parents, and they're going on there bashing this poor woman, and people are just ganging up on her. And it makes me so sad for her, you guys. Like, God just, I know this part of God's heart to like show people forgiveness, mercy, compassion, and love, especially when they already know. She already knows she has to deal with this horrific death of her son that she has to carry the rest of her life. And God wants her comforted. He doesn't want her bashed into the ground about this mistake that she's made. She already knows. And I know that if she could go back, she would change that day and she would do it differently, but she can't. So what's the point in putting her through this unnecessary torment? It's like I just see thousands of people ganging up on her, and because of the loss of her child's life. But what they're not taking into account is how their comments are making her feel like she doesn't even deserve to be alive, and she's already feeling that as a mother anyways. This is what God shared with me about her heart, and it's like they're not taking into account how their comments are could be responsible for her even taking her own life. Like, their comments can cause a suicide. And God's even told me that some people are so wicked and so evil who are leaving the comments that they're even hoping that she reads them, feeling the guilt of it, feeling like she doesn't deserve to live. Like, that's how evil people can be, is actually wanting to implant a seed within someone to want them to ponder the thoughts of suicide. Like, that's how evil. That's how evil people are, when they're not like overcoming their evil and their own hypocrisy in these type of situations, you know, when they're judging people for their mistakes. And it's like, I feel the same thing about like when there are parents who accidentally leave their children in hot cars, and it's like parents just come out of the woodwork and they're just like, how can you do this, you know, like, are you stupid, and how can you be so dumb and ignorant to not even think of your child, and how can, it's like people don't take into account that how busy people get, you know, parents get in moments, and to show compassion, to show mercy and grace to these poor parents who are already dealing with the loss of a loved one, of their own child that they gave birth to, that they helped bring into this world. The last thing that they need to hear is how bad they are. You know, they actually need a support team to come around them and comfort them and show them mercy, compassion, and love, so that they don't fall into a pit of hopelessness and suicidal thoughts, and you know, that whole cycle. It's like, I just see this world is really just so merciless, you guys. It's so sad. And I personally like to do this thing where I'll find these articles and I like to go in the comments and I like to leave, you know, uplifting comments of messages of like hope, to give the parents hope, and to really helped convict other people who read my comments, to get them to think about like, hey, wait a minute, you know, like there's been times in my own life when I've made parental mistakes, you know. It just gets people to really ponder the truth about their own hearts, how they're not perfect parents. Nobody is. Nobody. There's not one set of parents on this earth who are perfect, who have never made a mistake, who haven't done something that has caused their children like some form of pain in some way, whether it's, you know, yelling at their child or disciplining them with like spanking or something, some form of like parental mistakes that they've made, that, you know, it's not like there's perfect parents out there. There are parents. Every single parent has regret of some form, and it's like anyone who says otherwise are liars. And I know this to be truth because I myself have made parental mistakes, and I just get so revved up on this topic because when I read these type of articles, you know, the world just bashing parents who make mistakes, it's just, it does this thing to me where I want to go and I want to sit with them and defend them and give them hope. And because that's what God's doing, you know, especially, you know, parents who are grieving and they know what they did was wrong, you guys. They know the mistake they made, and they don't want to continue their life without their child. It's just, it's devastating. It's like God tells people to go and put their arms around this person and to sit with them and comfort them, not beat them to a pulp. You know, they already feel like crap. They already feel like the worst parent in the world, and then having everyone else tell them and remind them of how crappy of a parent they are is not going to help this person want to live. It's not going to want, it's not going to plant seeds in them to want to get up the next day and to find hope in their day at all. So it's like, it's just sad. Like, I just see how these types of articles really reveal the hearts of people in the world, and how evil and vicious and wicked it is, really, and just how hypocritical people are. And I'm just going to use myself as an example. I myself have made several horrific parental mistakes in my life that I'm just going to confess here. And because I want to like use this video as an example to help be a comfort to those who have made mistakes and who know that they have. So I'm just going to make my own confession here. Like, I'll just give you a couple examples, okay? When I got married when I was 17. My husband and I started a family right away. So we had 2 small children. I had 2 children. I was chasing after one and had one on the hip by the age of 19 and 20. So, yeah. So, like, by the time I was 20, I was chasing my daughter. and carrying my son around. He was just a baby on my hip. So there were several incidents where I made mistakes, you guys. Like, I'll just tell you one. There was one where, this is before my son was born, my daughter was, I want to say she was about 1.5, maybe 2, and she was in her diaper, and I remember this. I'll never forget it. It is devastating. But I was up late all night. I don't remember what I was doing. I could have been partying. I don't know if I had a few drinks or if it was just one of those nights where I just stayed up. And we had put her to bed. My husband was there, and I remember putting her to bed, and then I stayed up till like maybe 3 in the morning. And then I had a dream. And in this dream, I was searching for my daughter, and I was running around and I couldn't find her, and I was crying and screaming, and I couldn't find her. And then I woke up in real life to hearing her pitter-patter feet coming down the hallway, and instantly I knew something bad had just happened, and whatever had just happened for me hearing my daughter's pitter-patter on the floor was a miracle. Instantly, I grabbed her, and she was in her diaper, and I started hugging her, and I was crying. And nobody even told me anything at this point except for God had communicated to me that something so serious had just happened where I could have lost my daughter. And I grabbed her, and I was holding her and kissing her and saying, I love you so much. I'm so sorry. And then I heard a male's voice, which wasn't my husband's voice, in the next room. And I looked over, and my husband wasn't in bed. So I picked up my daughter, and I went in there to the next room, and it was a police officer. There were 2. And they were talking to my husband, and I was like half asleep, half awake, shocked, and they're looking at me. And then they said a few words to me, and I was like, what's going on? And then she jumped down from my arms and ran into the cop's arms, like she was wanting to like see them. And he was explaining to me how he had found her walking down the road in nothing but a diaper, and she was following kittens. She was trying to follow some kittens to see where they were going. And on our road, it's a country road, so it was like anybody could have flown over that hill and hit her, you guys. And what was revealed to us later is, and my daughter remembers this, she remembers taking the stool, she dragged it to the door, and she unlocked a couple of the locks, and she opened the door, and she saw some kittens, and she started just chasing after them. And now remember, she's about, I want to say about 2. Yeah, about 2 years old. She's still in diapers. And this happened at like 11 a.m. I was still asleep from having like a long night. I don't know what I was doing. I could have been listening to music, maybe had a couple drinks. I don't know. But whatever happened was I was sleeping in late and wasn't even aware that she had crawled out of bed because she was sleeping with me at that time. I do remember going to bed, and she ended up coming in bed with me at about 3, I guess. I ended up, because she would go from her bed to our bed, so she ended up sleeping with me. But what happened at that point then is that the cops were explaining that she was pointing to where she lived, and she pointed at the top of the hill, and the cops brought her back, and she told them that she found a kitty. She just kept saying, kitty, kitty, and they said, okay, you've been following kitties. Well, then they knocked on the door, and apparently my husband answered, and I was still asleep at this time. And they explained, and he said, oh my God, Courtney, and he grabbed her and picked her up, and then they were looking at the pictures on the walls and making sure that this is where she lived, and there she was in the pictures on the walls, and he was explaining to him what had happened. And then they did lovingly and firmly told us, you guys need to be careful. I would suggest putting more locks on there, because obviously she knows how to unlock the locks that you do have. So my husband went out and got like a bunch of locks to put on the doors, because she was super smart. And I mean, she was a smart baby. She could figure out how to get into things. I mean, it was a challenge to try and figure out ways to keep our cabinet doors and drawers locked. We had so many gadgets and gadgets on baby-proofing the house, like that sometimes it was almost impossible, because she would figure things out, like she was just very smart in that way. And so like that devastated me. It made me feel like the worst mother in the world. I remember crying, holding her, thanking God that she was okay, not even feeling like I deserved to be her mother. And like, I was so young, I was 20. So like, I can't imagine if we had internet back then, and if my story had made the internet, like what people would have said to me when it was a genuine mistake. And obviously, like, it made me more aware of like wanting to make sure that I wasn't staying up too late, you know, without, being aware of what was going on. Like, it made me more conscious and aware, like to make sure that I go to bed at a better time at that age. Yeah, I just remember feeling so blessed that nothing bad had happened to her, because something really bad could have happened. So we later found out too that the reason why the cops came in the first place is because one of the neighbor guys said, they called the cops and said, I see this child walking down the road, but I don't want to go pick her up because I don't want it to make it look like I took this child or whatever. So he was one of our neighbors, and I'm so thankful that he made that phone call and that it saved her life, because the cops were there within less than 10 minutes. I mean, she could have wandered down the street further where there was an actual highway, about a mile away or something. I don't know that she would have gotten that far, but anybody could have flown over that hill and just killed my daughter and hit her with a car or something. So I'm just sharing this because this is just an example of one of my parental mistakes that I know that so many people would judge me on had I talked about this years and years ago, if things like that were talked about on the internet. But I thought I'd throw this out there, so if you're a parent who has made a mistake, I just want you to know my heart is with you. God loves you. His compassion and mercy and grace is upon you. And just imagine me in spirit giving you a big hug. And Jesus loves you so much. None of us are perfect, you guys. We're all going to make mistakes. And, hopefully we learn from them, right? Because that's the best part of making a mistake, is you can always learn from it. But I hope that you guys learn from my mistake. I hope that it humbles you or encourages you to show other people compassion and love, in the same way that God would, and to really reflect on your own parental mistakes and to admit that, hey, you don't have it all together either. Like, you're not perfect either. We all make mistakes. But yeah, I wanted to talk about that. And then Jesus is reminding me about when I read that article about that poor boy who fell into, the septic tank. There was also a time when I had my children outside and they had their cousins, which are the same age, and we were just all playing, like with the older girls. I was helping them with a tree fort, kind of like with sticks and stuff. And my son and his cousin were the same age. They were born 5 days apart. And I remember, like, literally, I'm sitting here helping the girls build this little tree fort, and I'm watching the boys at the same time, and they're just going around gathering sticks, and then literally, like 20 seconds, it got silent. So I turned around, couldn't see them, didn't know where they were, and I went looking for them off into the brush, and we did have a huge hole, and it was, I don't know, I want to guess like 10 to 12 feet deep, and there was a septic system down there, and there was water. Well, I wasn't even aware of this part of it being like this. I thought that it was going to be like fenced in, or I had no idea. I mean, we had 20 acres. I had no idea that it was like that in that brush over there. But anyways, so I went to look for them, and they came close to the hole, and I was so thankful, that I know it was Jesus, like, telling me, go find them. And I did. And I mean, if they had walked 5 or 10, I don't know, feet, they could have fallen into the hole. But thankfully they were standing there in the brush, and I grabbed them and brought them back to where I was, and we didn't play in that area anymore, and thankfully we got out of that area altogether. But I'm just saying, like, things can happen like that, and you don't know. And this is my way of saying, look, you guys, we've all made mistakes, and I just want to teach parents to show parents compassion, love, forgiveness, and hope. So I hope that you learn from my story. Yeah, I wasn't a perfect parent, and I made a lot of mistakes, you guys, a lot. So I want to use all the mistakes that I made to help teach others, like, hey, it can be a teaching tool, a teaching lesson that you can help, teach others, just to be more aware and to show compassion and love to those who do make mistakes, because we all make them. Anyways, thanks for listening to my rant. I hope you're having a great night. Show compassion and love to people who make mistakes, because I know that if you guys were in the same shoes of these parents who have made horrific mistakes, you would want people to show you compassion, mercy, and love too. I know I would. Okay, so I hope you guys are having a great night. God bless.